Hello, welcome to a podcast edition of GTFO. So today we are referring back to our top 5 tips for building a healthy workplace culture that we did on the Facebook Live last week. And today we're going to do a deep dive into a real life case study. So once again, we have got Natalie from Dynamic HR. Natalie, what's your name and where'd you come from?
Hi, I'm Natalie, and I run Dynamic HR services. So I conventionally started off life running an HR consultancy, and then moved very quickly from HR into building great cultures. So that's what my passion is, and that's what I love to do for small businesses.
That's what your company specializes in, is it? It's a HR consultancy, but you really you're not just like problem solving, are you? You are focusing on dealing with the issue at the source, or preventing the issue even, by creating a great workplace culture.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I learned very quickly that the symptoms that you see in a business, such as poor performers or the need for disciplinaries or grievances as a pop-up, are simply symptoms of a wider problem. And the problem generally is, and one of a number of things, generally either the person at the top or people at the top, or just having a really toxic work culture. And if you can solve that, then there's less need for HR situations to arise.
Yeah, and I mean, it has that knock-on effect throughout everything, doesn't it? I mean, it affects a business's bottom line if you're thinking about it from an employer's point of view. It also affects, things like staff turnover. It affects your staff's mental health. So really, how effective and efficient a business is going to be is fundamentally based on how happy are the people that work in that business, and that all comes down to creating a good workplace culture.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, that's it. Nailed it. I mean, people say this sort of stuff is complex, but it isn't. Like, if you boil everything down to basic human needs and behaviors, then really, why wouldn't you build a great place to work? Why would you not want your people to go away happy at the end of the day and fulfilled and feeling good about themselves and the job that they've done?
Yeah.
Because ultimately, as a business owner, that does absolutely, as you say, impact on so many things. There are so many benefits of having happy people.
Yeah.
It's a nice place to work. You get a bit more of a buzz about your own business, but also, like you say, you're saving. You've got improved performance. You've got therefore better profitability. You've all of the things. You've got a lower staff turnover. You've got just there's so many benefits of just
and it's demonstrable as well, isn't it? I'm sure you meet people that have objections, business owners that have objections to this, but this is clearly demonstrable, that you can say, well, point to this business that is doing this and their turnover went up or their staff retention went up or whatever. So it's not just woo woo, is it? It's quite clearly proven over time.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's one of the biggest objectives that I get objections that I get is, this is all pink and fluffy bullshit. I'm like, yeah, cool, okay.
Yeah.
You tell me that again once we've put in the framework and you're actually got decent, happy staff in place, and that you're not dealing with like the shit show of a load of disciplinaries and poor performers, and you're happier in your own business. Then you tell me that it's pink and fluffy bullshit.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, this is exactly what we're going to prove with the case study that you're going to talk to us about in a minute. So just to recap on what we did talk about on the Friday edition of the Facebook Live, which you can find over on Grow Traffic's Facebook page, and you can find on Grow Traffic's YouTube account. But the top 5 tips were: number 1, start at the top, because a good culture comes from the top down. Number 2, have a vision and share it, a vision of where you're going, and tell your staff. That's the most important bit. Number 3, have a robust framework, and that could be policies, but it could also just be practices that you put in place in the workplace on a day-to-day basis. Number 4, hire fast and fire fast, to make sure you're getting the right people. And number 5, know your people, but also trust your people and treat them like adults. So all of those seem fairly obvious and fairly straightforward, but as we'll see as you go on, Natalie, to tell us this case study, all of these points are sort of demonstrated here, aren't they? So you're going to talk and I'm going to try and pull them out as we get to them. So Natalie, take it away. Tell us about this anonymized case study that was a real life client of yours.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so this is one of my favorite clients to work with, I'll be honest, because we've made so many changes and they've been so positive. So back in the day, back sort of early 2020, the early 2000s.
Yes, then.
I'm like, I can't get my head around these anymore now.
No, I know, it's crazy, isn't
backwards.
it?
There was a guy who set up a guy who's actually an old friend of mine through various different routes. Set up a business back in the day. He's a very much a young entrepreneur at that point. Young then, right?
Yeah, 20 years ago. Yeah.
And he'd won a load of young entrepreneur. That's why I'm calling him a young entrepreneur, because he'd actually won a load of young entrepreneur awards, previous businesses he'd been involved with. His business was very much set up around technology and a media business, right? It was that kind of typical Wolf of Wall Street, work hard, play hard culture. It had quite a corporate vibe, and what I would determine as a presenteeism culture. So it was all about rewarding people who came in early, left very late, and pretty much sold their soul to the devil.
Yeah.
It was quite a high stress environment at that point in time, but the positives were that it was a very agile and flexible business. So he ran that business, made it incredibly profitable, was turning over millions at that point, and then decided that actually he was kind of bored at that point with the business, and wanted to pursue other adventures and other avenues, other business ventures, basically. So he left the business at that point in care of an MD. He took actually another friend of his had taken him and put him in the place of MD.
Mm.
However, things kind of started to go wrong. Now, I didn't have involvement, by the way, in the beginnings of the life of this business, because if I had, then they wouldn't have been doing this.
Yes.
The MD at the time, so the new MD, basically changed the business and modelled it on probably what I would determine as quite an old school form of management and corporate type style of business.
Had this MD worked in the business previously, or had he come in entirely new to it?
Good question. He'd had in some vague involvement in the business, and obviously knew the business owner, the founder of the business, but hadn't been working in the business.
Wasn't working in it, yeah. Okay.
Solely, yeah. So the changes that he made is that he put in a lot of different layers of management, and he doubled the business in terms of employees pretty much within a couple of years, which in my opinion is quite a dangerous thing to do anyway. But then putting in loads of layers of management is also not going to help to keep a business flexible and agile. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, at that point in time, the wrong people were hired. They got very, very busy. I mean, the business was doing really well at that point. They got very, very busy. They grabbed people off the street and chucked them on the bum, as a bum on the seat, basically.
Yeah, panic employing.
Yeah, exactly. What I call distress recruiting, but panic employing. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the business lost that flexibility. It lost that agility. They then brought in an HR person, like an in-house HR person. Again, fatal error in my opinion, because unfortunately putting an HR person into the business, they constantly having to justify what they're doing in the business. So they tend to over policy businesses. They put too many processes in. And again, that kind of takes away that entrepreneurial, flexible, fun kind of business. It takes away that culture.
I suppose the risk as well of an in-house HR person is that they become equally indoctrinated. We were talking about this last week, weren't we? The beauty of a consultant is that you come in and you look at that with outside eyes, whereas when you're in it, you're just gonna start to sort of toe the line. You don't have that same level of autonomy, I suppose, or ability to criticize, perhaps.
Absolutely, yeah, and you are ultimately responsible. You're accountable and responsible, but also for that. But also, you can't really act independently from the people at the top, because it's your job on the line, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So too many rules, too many layers of complexity, and unfortunately, at that point, clients started to get pissed off. Right, because they weren't being given the same account manager. They were being, there was sort of turnover and churn and all sorts of things, and the sort of customer service that sort of really personalized customer service got lost, and they started to lose money. There was then that point in time, which it's kind of nature, human nature, is that there was a big blame culture because things were going wrong. Management started to blame and basically just created a massive toxic culture.
Yeah, and that becomes like a really kind of a downward spiral very quickly, that doesn't it? That like within a matter of weeks that can go nasty.
Yeah, absolutely. And that sort of that bullying culture, that blame culture was just like, it was rife all over the place. There were little pockets of good management and little teams and stuff, but it was it was interesting to go into that at that point.
Roughly how many employees did the company have at this point?
I reckon they had around about 50-ish, maybe topping 60 at that point.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so the founder came back, obviously like big alarm bells, money, company really profitable, now losing money. He's like, oh shit, what's gone on here? So he came back into the business around 2016. And I know that he has said many times that he's regretted having left that sort of left the business to, because of all the dramatic changes that happened. So he then decided that he was going to strip out everything. Literally, he was brutal with it. He initially stripped back all of the middle management. He removed all of the wrong people. He made approximately, I think it was about 30 redundancies, including removing the HR person in there.
Right.
Okay, which is when really then he got in touch with me and said, listen, I need help.
Yeah, absolutely.
Things have gone dramatically wrong in my business, and because of we've been friends, we had sort of mutual contact. He must have been having a conversation with them, and they said, "Oh, this is what Natalie's doing now. She's focusing very much on
reinvigorating
reforming cultures and undoing toxic work cultures."
Yeah.
That's kind of best way of doing it, of talking about it. So we started talking about a concept of a restart up. So basically that's taking a company back to its core and almost treating it like a new startup.
I suppose it's a bit like a rebrand, isn't it? But it's a rebrand, but for internally, for your policies and for your staff and what have you.
Everything, actually. Yeah, we literally he's the branding and marketing guy really within his own business. So yeah, we stripped everything back, literally took it all back way back to the basics. I think we ended up with about 20 odd people back in the business. Yeah, so it was proper stripped back.
Yeah.
And at that point then we sat down and looked at the culture that he wanted to create. Now that's interesting because actually that culture that he wanted to create at that point has now since changed. There was definitely a sort of in his head, he wanted that to go back to that sort of entrepreneurial, fast-paced kind of business. And he wanted to recreate that again. And I kept saying to him, that's not how we do business anymore. We need
that
to be
time's
more
passed.
We need to be more people focused. And he was like, yeah, whatever. I want that back again. So I'm like, okay, you crack on, Treacle. And then let's talk again in a year's time.
Yeah.
But so during that sort of time, we started to build a new culture, and he eventually listened to me, and he did realize that, and now it's something he uses quite often, is that we are only as good as our people phrase, and that you'll see that a lot within their sort of employer or employee branding. So I think also what really helped was we'd obviously had those conversations about this is not how we do business anymore. It's very much more people focused, flat hierarchies. It's all about empowering people rather than micromanaging. And he went on a leadership course. And he really did at that point grasp, I think, the sort of modern way of management, which is more that leadership, leading and coaching and and molding people into where you want rather than micromanaging, right?
Yeah, so that was our first one, wasn't it? Start at the top. And I think it's really interesting, that point about doing a leadership course, because I was having this conversation with somebody the other week. You don't go into business to be a boss or a leader necessarily. You start
No.
a business because you are passionate about doing the thing that is your specialism, and then you, as your business grows, then you have to manage people and you have to start to do all these things. Now 9 times out of 10, you know, you can outsource it. You can outsource your accountancy, you can outsource your HR, you can outsource your legal things, but actually leading that company, that's the one thing that you can't. And I think it's a real strength, and I think a lot of business owners are coming to realize this now, that there's no shame in saying, I'm going to learn how to do this better. And there are fortunately quite a lot of providers now that will provide, you know, do really good business management courses or business consultancy or leadership, whatever you want to call it. I think it's appropriate to shop around, because there are a lot of different sort of strategies and practitioners, and not everything will be right for everybody or every business. So find the one. But I've been doing, I did some leadership training just at the tail end of last year, and I found it phenomenally beneficial. Not in the way that it, you know, I went into it thinking this is going to teach me some strategies about how to deal with other people, and it did. But actually what it mostly did was make me question things about myself. And it's like you've got to look to yourself first and think, okay, well, why do I react to this? Or why do I react this way? Or why do I feel like this? Dismantle all of that, take your ego out of it, and then you put those strategies in place to go, okay, you know, I assumed I was relaying everything that was in my head to my staff, but now I realized that I wasn't, and I've got to actually put it into words and tell them, you know. But I think, you know, it is really, really useful. And I think even if you can't afford it, a lot of places, chambers of commerce and like Boost Lancashire, places like that, provide quite a lot of this stuff for free. You can get like 12 hours of mentoring and stuff, can't you? So yeah, I think that's key. That leadership training is really, really good point.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're absolutely right. It starts with self-awareness.
Yeah,
so a lot of people, I think also it's a good point to make a difference between or to state the difference that there is management training and there's leadership training, and we're focusing on leadership training because management is old school. We're now leading people. There's always processes to be managed, but it's different. You don't manage people, you lead people, in my opinion.
Good. Yeah, excellent point. Yeah.
So as part of that strategy, we also stripped out all of the old school processes, policies. We removed the archaic KPIs, and we moved more towards OKRs, which is basically about outcome-based working, right? So again, that kind of increases the ability for people to feel more empowered over the job. So, you know, you hire experts, so why then tell them how to do their job, right? Just say, this is the outcome, this is what we're looking to achieve, you crack on, right? And that's really how, you know, we should be working in businesses, service-based businesses.
Yeah, that covers a couple of the points. I mean, that's like point 5, you know, treat your employees as adults, certainly, but you know, have a vision and share it and have a robust framework. It is about that. When we say have a robust framework, it's not micromanaging. It's not every little minute of your staff's day has to have a framework around it. It's a broad, you know, this is what we expect. This is what good looks like. So this is where we need you to get to. And, you know, we will do everything in our power to help you get there, but we're not going to micromanage you and discipline you and all the rest of it. It's just, well, we talked about this last week, didn't we? It's that, you know, reward training rather than punishment training, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly that. Is it all of those things? So at that point then, we moved into training the management as well in more of the leadership training, because obviously, you know, the founder had gone through his leadership training, and so then distilled it down to his other managers, which definitely helped as well. And then one of the things I think that contributed to the success at that point in time is they also moved to a hybrid way of working. So previously, I mean, again, I had identified that presenteeism culture was actually contributing quite heavily to the toxicity within the business. So we actually moved them away very, very reticently, by the way, by the foundation, by the founder, shall I say. Very reticent about giving up that kind of control, but he was halfway through his leadership sort of course at that point. So I was like, well, let's try it. You can use it as an experiment, and you can go back to your leadership training and sort of, you know, and have, you know, get some support from those people as well, and you can see if it works. Anyway, so it did work, right?
This is pre-pandemic, isn't it? This wasn't initiated by the COVID. Yeah.
So this was somewhere in about, I think, 2018, so maybe just before then, 17, 18, so pre-pandemic. And we set rules around it. They needed to be in the office 3 days a week, but they could work from home 2 days a week. So, and that really worked. It helped a lot with flexibility. It helped a lot of the girls in the women in the office.
Yeah.
You know, that was definitely a really good piece of feedback that we got from that. And, you know, I think really we looked at the productivity at that point, and we found that the productivity really rose, especially on the days where people were working from home, weirdly, because, you know, my founder was like, nah, they'll do fuck all at home.
Yeah.
They'll watch daytime TV. I'm like, right, well, you just wait. And, you know, they were saving an hour. A lot of the employees were saving an hour to 2 hours on commuting because they found out. So, you know, there was a lot of commute time, and because they were saving on that, actually most of them got up at the same time and just cracked on with some work.
Yeah.
Now, you know, and we're able to sort of do the work when they felt they were most productive as well, because they weren't sat in an office being looked at the whole time. Right?
Yes.
So that really worked. However, we came across some challenges, and that was the lack of communication between employees who were working at home and those people in the office. And it was at that point we started to explore some technology. They are a kind of a techie company anyway, but they took some, started to use some off the shelf, you know, sort of solutions at that point. So they started to introduce Slack, and they were using Trello back in those days for project management, all of those sort of things. Back in the, I mean, we didn't have so many options like now that we do now, and they used Teams and Zoom and various other things. So that definitely helped as well. So, and then the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
And they were like, shit, what do we do? But they were already pre-set up, you know, because people had been working from home anyway. So they had, you know, their workstations from home, and they had all the technology in place. So really they sailed through that point, and the business that they do, like the business, the industry that they're in, went absolutely crazy. Like they really boomed over that time, which was brilliant to see. It's kind of what they needed, really, I think, at that point.
I mean, this is very similar to sort of grow traffic, and the way we managed to pivot at the time of the pandemic, because that's how we were. You know, we did have an office, but we had moved. Well, we'd always been, you know, flexible working, remote working, you know, work as and when you need to, when you're most productive, and so we had also followed that journey of finding systems. We use Asana. We use you know, Zoom all the time. We use WhatsApp all the time. So various, you know, platforms very similar to ones you mentioned, so that when the pandemic did come, in fact we made the decision that our staff would work from home a week before we went into official lockdown, because we just thought that, you know, they were nervous about the situation. We thought, how do we make them feel more comfortable? You know, we can work from home, we can do it, we've got the policies, everyone's got a laptop, everything's set up, just everybody work from home, and we did that straight away. So I think as well, you know, like you say, all of those benefits are there, but that stood us in such good stead going into the pandemic, because a lot of companies spent the first 3 months of the pandemic chasing their tails, didn't they?
Absolutely.
Trying to get laptops to their staff, and trying to get logins for people at home, and trying to get broadband set. You know, it just meant we could hit the ground running and keep going. So yeah, unforeseen and not planned for, but an added benefit.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, totally an added benefit. So now they actually recently they did a staff survey. I say recently, like last year, they did a staff survey and found that actually, to be honest, most people really enjoyed working from home. And then there was obviously the people who kind of liked a bit of both. None of the team said they definitely want to go back to an office. So they actually got rid of their beautiful fancy offices. And now use you know, hubs wherever people are. And in fact, actually, it's been interesting because there's definitely a skills gap in that area, in that sort of industry as well, where they just can't get certain jobs or people to fill jobs. So they've been able to take people on from all around the country rather than focusing on southern, you know, the southern areas, which has been really interesting for them, because it's meant that they can be super flexible, but it also means that, so, you know, they can take on people from everywhere, and then those people kind of occasionally come down to a hub, or if they want to get big groups together, then they'll just hire offices for the day or for a week or whatever and do some strategizing if that's what they need. But it's really interesting that they've now gone pretty much virtual, with the ability to work from these, you know, flexi hubs. And it's working really well.
It's interesting. I mean, again, this is a great parallel with Grow Traffic, because that's exactly how we're working. We will have an office, but because we're creating a business growth hub, and we will have an office in there, but we will never be an everybody in the office Monday to Friday 9 to 5 type of business. And that flexibility is great, but it is interesting, and I think that mix is the absolute key for people. Very few people want to work from home entirely by themselves all the time.
Correct.
Very few people want to work in an office all the time, but that hybrid model is absolutely what people are looking for, because there are times when, you know, it's not. I mean, we've had times when some of the Grow Traffic team that are local have just come to my house and sat here around the dining table with me. We haven't got a lot of work done on those days because we've mostly just gossiped, but it's been really nice to everybody get together. And we've done a bit of training, and absolutely, that's the key thing. So I think, you know, this is the thing for businesses. I think a lot of business owners that I know, when we went remotely, work from home, they see it as an absolute either or, don't they? Like either everybody's going to be at home, and how do I run my business like that, or I want everybody back in the office. And it's about getting that message through about that hybrid model is going to be the way forwards.
I think what's been I think one of the biggest wake-up calls for this founder was that business is not all about business. It's about people, it's about relationships, and it's about connection, as well as actually doing the work as well. I think that was probably the biggest awakening really that he had. And I think that's now very much been shoehorned, actually not shoehorned, but created within the culture that they have now. So the culture is very much sort of flat level. There obviously are hierarchies. We need some hierarchies. Humans need hierarchies, but not in the way of that command and control manager, or that command and control micromanagement style. It's just simply, this is the person that is in charge of, you know, the workflow or whatever, or someone who is more experienced and can actually, you know, support and coach other people within the business. It's that kind of hierarchy, and it is very much about accountability, responsibility, and empowerment. Work to outcomes, work when you need to, you know, when it works for you, and, you know, as long as you're there for client meetings and whatever else they're expected to do in your job within the business, then, you know, they're good to go, right? And I think that's been a huge, if you can imagine that kind of flexibility versus the old style of that kind of real presenteeism. You must be in the business, and you must be there, and you must be working. It's completely sort of night and day, really. The culture that is now has been created. They're also far more productive. They're making more of a profit than they were when they were huge teams, and there's still a team of around about 22 people.
I think the sad thing though with that is, I mean, that, you know, with Grow Traffic, we have been through iterations and tried things and abandoned things and all that. You know, I'm not trying to make out that we are at the pinnacle of businesses or anything, but we set out from the beginning to build a company like that. And I imagine, you know, this example of this business going from the size that it was, you know, down by 2/3 essentially. That will have been a painful process, won't it? And so you know, the story here has got to be, build this stuff in from, you know, as soon as you can, start doing it, or just drip feed it and do it slowly or whatever. Don't wait until your business is in crisis mode and then you have to do it. You know,
have a plan from the beginning is exactly right. So interesting from my point of view, and I'm going to go on to some of the benefits, because some of the things that they're being really, really forward thinking in some of their benefits. But one of the things that I really made it kind of stood out to me when you asked me to do this case study, I was thinking about it and I thought, God, actually reflecting on it, really interesting. So back in the day when I first got involved and when we were changing the culture, and back prior to that, I know that they had a lot of HR issues, and we were talking about this, the symptoms of a poor culture were popping up all of the time. So compared to sort of when we had that presenteeism culture where we were constantly dealing with poor performers, constantly disciplining people, a lot of different grievances or complaints, and complaints about stress, complaints about bullying, complaints about other colleagues being dickheads, basically. There's so many of those things. Now, I can't remember the last time I dealt with, an HR problem with them. Literally, I can't. I think the last time I dealt with one was one of the employees, a lady, was really struggling with working from home during the pandemic, managing her kids and all of those different things, and that's literally the last HR problem that I dealt with, which really demonstrates just how you can reduce all of the stress and the tension and the HR issues just by changing and having a great culture.
Well, I mean, it's obvious when you think about it, isn't it? Because, we spend an awful lot of time, or we did in the old days, we spent most of our lives at work, and yet businesses will hire the person that is right for the job, not necessarily the person that is right for everybody else who's sat in that office. So, of course, you're going to be sat in an office with people that just get on your fucking tits constantly. And there's going to be those frictions and all the rest of it. And actually just being able to remove yourself from that and say, do you know what, I'm just going to get on with my job. I'll talk to that person via email or whatever, but you can limit it and you can say, I'll only deal with them in a meeting, or I'll only answer their calls once a day or whatever. That is so much better for sort of human relationships. And if you have a colleague that you get on really well with, you two can go and work in your coffee shop together or in your shared office or whatever. So workplaces were always really fractious environments, weren't they? And it just makes complete sense that why do we have to put up with that? Why? Who said that was the world?
Well, yeah, correct. And also, we've got to remember that not everyone's extroverted and is happy to work in those types of environments. Some people, a lot of people are either omnivert, I'm an omnivert, sort of bit of both, and then introverted as well. And actually they're loads better, left in right. Do you know what I mean? And not have to constantly interact with people around them. Now, interestingly, also I found, so I'm dyslexic, and working in an open planned office with loads of stuff going around, it just does not suit me.
No,
I literally can't concentrate, and if I'm trying to spell words in my head and it just doesn't work, it's things like that, with that constant, people talking at you or talking around you. For me, it just didn't work. So I work from home, and I'll only go and work on client sites or in offices when necessary. But got to remember that not everyone's built the same way.
Absolutely. I'm exactly the same. And I used to work I used to work in an office when I worked for the NHS, and it was one of those offices where it was quite a big room, but it wasn't quite big enough that if you wanted to talk to somebody at the other side, you had to get up and go to them. So people would literally just shout across the room at each other, and I was like in the corner trying to do phone calls and do my job, and I just couldn't concentrate. And then I when we started doing Grow Traffic, I worked from home for literally by myself for probably 3 years. And then I remember Dali was working in an office in Manchester, and there was this talk or something happening. He said, "Oh, come over," and I was at a meeting, finished early. I said, "Can I just come and work in your office for a couple of hours before this thing in the evening?" He said, "Yeah." Did not get a jot of work done because so many people were just coming and talking at you. And I was like, having worked on my own for 3 years, and I was like, why are you talking to me? Can you not see I am typing? Just because I am here, do not talk to me. And I certainly, there's a time and a place, absolutely. I like meeting people and talking to people. But if I've got a piece of work to do, I need quiet, and I need to not be interrupted, because once my head's in that space, I want to just crack on and do it. And that's the same for a lot of people, isn't it? So we've built this one size fits all world of work, and especially since we went to the offices with multiple people and just those tiny partitions in, but that only works for a certain type of person. So maybe potentially half your workforce is not productive. So
absolutely. So one of the things I wanted to share, because this is actually, to be fair, right, between you and me and like the people listening, I actually use this company as a bit of a guinea pig. But willing guinea pig on increasing a lot of the benefits. So very much now this business is very, very, very people focused, right? They do everything for their people. Okay, so here's a list of some of the things, because I think some of them are quite interesting, and quite a few, not quite a few of them are quite pioneering. So we have a generous maternity package. So they get 5 months full pay and 3 months half pay, and then the rest is statutory or unpaid. But that's a huge amount more than you would get from most companies.
Yeah.
Generous paternity package. Now this was really interesting because the founder went away and had babies. His missus had babies, and he realised that actually she needed a lot more support than he thought she needed. Right?
Yes.
And so it was like, hold on a minute, this baby thing is not that easy, right?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be nice if we allowed our male or other partners to have a generous maternity package? So they offer up to 6 weeks of full pay leave. Good. Which is great, amazing.
Yeah.
Because it really is. It allows the partner to bond with that child, and also give support to their other partner as well.
It's
which
crucial.
is really important.
When I had Leon, Dally got a week's paternity leave, and I was in hospital for that week. So literally the day I came home, he was back at work, and I'd had a cesarean, so I'd had stitches. I couldn't do anything, and it was literally like, I just remember the first day he was like, right, see ya. See you 12 hours, and I was like, what I don't know how to look after this thing, don't go. So
and you're in pain.
And I'm in pain. It makes a huge difference. Like you say, that those bonding things, you don't get that back, and this is one of the big problems. And in fact, we were talking about this over on Shooting the Shit, which is our feminism and business podcast, just on Monday this week. But how do we improve the health of women and men at work? And it comes down to policies like this, because having that time off, it sounds like a woolly fluffy thing, you get to, but actually, if mum's got support, she's much more likely to be able to breastfeed successfully. So you're going to have a much more healthy baby, you're going to have a much more healthy mother, mental health wise, they're much better. That relationship between father and child is much more well developed, so you've got better mental health again, and relationships and all that. Those knock-on effects are phenomenal if we want to build a nice society for us all to live in. So
it's culture, it's that culture and society, the two work together. And just to sort of put a caveat on that as well, they also include anyone who's looking to adopt as well, right? So all of that applies to them as well. So they then have unlimited time off to attend IVF or fertility treatments as well. Good. Including the partners as well. So I think that's really important, because we know that a lot of women do, and men do struggle. So that's been an interesting one. Then we had a miscarriage policy. Good. And this was actually off the back of one of the team members who had 3 miscarriages recently, and was just really struggling. So that's paid compassionate leave, and then paid time off to attend any follow-up medical appointments, that kind of stuff. Good. Interestingly and controversially, they also have a pregnancy termination policy as well, because as we know, not everybody is ready to be a parent, not everybody wants to be a parent, and sometimes things happen. Life happens. So they also provide paid compassionate leave, and also again paid time off to attend medical appointments, linked to that. They provide critical illness family support, life assurance, private medical insurance, and this is for every employee, it's not just the people at the top. Then this is one of my favorites, is not because I'm morbid, by the way, but bereavement leave for people and for pets, which I think is really important, right? Because a lot of people, especially these days, see their pets as part of the family. I mean, in my opinion, they are part of the family. They absolutely are. I mean, my dog is basically a surrogate child, right? So if I lost him, I would be fucking mortified. And I would not be wanting to be in work at any point in time. No. So they do that. Fully remote working, should they wish to. Obviously, they can use hubs if they want to. They have got certain hubs that they're signed up to. 10% matched pension, stuff that we should all be thinking about. Not absolutely. What we do, not always.
Don't mention the P words.
I know, God, don't. I'm going to be very poor when I'm old. I'm going to be working when I'm 95 going,
yes, we all are.
Flexible working hours. They have like an exclusive discount club as well. you get to take your birthday off. Yay.
Yeah, we do that at Grow Traffic actually.
Yeah.
We don't force people, like you can
No.
take it another time if you want, but yeah,
Correct.
your birthday off.
Yeah. And they get brand new Mac equipment. How cool is that?
Yeah.
So yeah, and again, because if people have got the right tools, they've got the right, they're happy, people like nice, shiny, brand new things, right? And it makes them feel special, it makes them feel privileged, and quite rightly, because and they like stuff that actually, people. I remember one place I worked, I was given this archaic laptop that took about 15 minutes to start up, and I was like, oh shit, really?
Yeah.
How unvalued did I feel at that point? I was like, really? This is not, I mean, my laptop at home was better,
Yeah. And stuff like that. I mean, we do this at the moment because we were saying we need to buy our next round of laptops, because one of our members of staff, she was like, it takes like 10 minutes to log in every morning. We're like, right, you can't work with that. We need to replace it. But just on, on the other stuff, and this is what we were talking about on the feminism podcast the other week, last week, that the fact that those policies are in place doesn't just make the employees' lives better. What that does is that gives them the ability to tell you to tell you, actually, I'm going to go and have an abortion and I'm going to need some time off to have it. Otherwise, what they would do is they would just be absent, or they'd just take a day off because their cat had died, and they can't face work. And what you then end up with, like you said before, you're back into managing attendance and disciplinaries and all of that, stuff that's so labor intensive and so costly, and just such a waste of everybody's time, when actually if you just up front and say to people, look, if you have lost your pet and you are really upset, take a day off. I mean, I had to have one of my horses put down a couple of weeks ago, and I just took it for granted that I would not be working for the rest of the day because I was a sniveling mess. And I would expect my staff to be exactly the same. It's ridiculous, isn't it?
I think what the policies do is they empower people to navigate their life.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? At the end of the day, and actually make adult decisions, right? And that's what we need to be doing.
And that's back to two of the other points that we have a robust framework that provides people that flexibility within it. But again, we're back to know your people all the time, aren't we? Know them and trust them and treat them like adults, and you get a much more better rewarded for it.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, ultimately that's the case study. I mean, some of the things, if you want to, I mean, I think the title of the podcast was the benefits of. So if you want me to go quick whip over the benefits of these things that I've definitely seen. And again, right, we're going to talk about this being pink fluffy bullshit, but actually it really does matter. So some of the pink and fluffy stuff that is difficult to put or quantify. There you go, get the right words.
I'd lost it then as well. I was like, quantitate. That must be a word.
Yeah, quantitate. That's a good word. We'll have that one. Is that we have happy people. Now, happy people make more productive people. They make more creative people. And when people are happy, they're happier in happy in work, they're happier in themselves. And that has a knock-on effect on the fact that they then have a happier family life, they have happier colleagues, and you as a business get happier clients, because if you're dealing with cool, happy, upbeat people, then clearly why would you not love that company? You get more inspired people, and again, good leadership inspires. And I'm a massive, I haven't got the book with me, but I'm a massive fan of Simon Sinek and his Start With Why. So if anyone's listening and thinking I need to nail down this leadership malarkey, then go and read that, because that's definitely helped. But when you have inspired people, you have more innovative, creative and productive people as well, which is certainly important in many businesses.
But again, it's common sense, isn't it? Because if you're spending your entire working life feeling pissed off because Kevin keeps stealing your yogurt out the fridge, you're not thinking about how you're going to design these flyers for your next client, are you? So release people from mundanity, and they can actually do their job better and focus on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Goddamn Kevin.
Yes, bloody yogurt thief.
Then obviously, really, this is more, I suppose, that's super important. But actually, from a management point of view, they're like, oh yeah, let's give me some more, give me something a bit more tangible.
Yeah.
It's about attracting really good staff. If you've got a good culture, and by the way, staff talk, right?
Yes.
And if you've ever not looked at Glassdoor, go and have a nosy at Glassdoor, which is basically like the FIFO or whatever, like the ratings for businesses, and just double check that yours has not got a shit rating, right?
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it's quite interesting how some businesses have got a really, really bad reputation from just people looking on Glassdoor, because staff do go and look at the companies that they're going to join, and they will do as much vetting as you would on an Amazon product or any of the, you know, any sort of service side.
Do you know what, this really surprised me actually, because we've been doing some interviews recently for a couple of roles, a sales role and a content executive role, so very different roles. But we were interviewing someone, quite a young person, and they said, oh yeah, something, and they said, oh yeah, no, how's your rabbit, Rachel? And I was like,
they've been stalking you.
They've been stalking me. And I mean, you know, everything is open and out there, obviously, on social media. You know, our Grow Traffic Facebook page is very much about the people. So I was really impressed by it, but it just sort of took me off guard. I was like, oh God, yeah. You know, people who are coming, they're interviewing us as much as we're interviewing them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings us to our, you know, our hire fast, point 4 it was last week, hire fast, fire fast. But, you know, that the caveat of that was, if you've got a good workplace culture, you are attracting the right people in the first place. So there's less of the firing and there's more of the hiring, because you're getting the right people in front of you.
Yeah, absolutely. But if you identify people who are not fitting, then it's definitely a good idea to decide, well, to make that decision. Are you gonna, exactly, are you gonna have them or not? Retention, now that's really important, because especially at the moment, it is costing a lot of money and time and effort, and which all basically costs money to recruit, right? So hiring is massively expensive right at the moment, time wise and actual costs. So retaining your staff is really, really important. Now, interestingly enough, this company that we're talking about in the case study, they now have staff that have been there for 18, 20 odd years, right? So whilst they did get, obviously we did a big strip out at the beginning, they were kind of the people that weren't the original core. So core team, but they still have some of the original core team with them, and I think that's really a testimony really to how well they've done.
But I mean, also as well, from an employer's point of view, you know, yes, you know, hiring is massively expensive, but you've put so much into those employees. You know, I mean, we do an awful lot of training. We always say to our staff, you know, if you want to go on a conference, or if you want to go on a course, or if you want to upskill, you know, within reason, and provided it's related to your job, do it. You know, we want people to progress and get better, because that makes our business better. That improves what we offer to our clients. But if you've then done that with somebody for 3 years and invested all of that time and effort into them, and then they go somewhere else, you know, that's a wasted resource.
It is.
So, you know, it just makes sense, doesn't it? Invest in your staff, and hopefully you'll keep them.
Yeah, absolutely. And so with the retention is obviously then, you know, the outcome is having a lower staff turnover of staff, which is, you know, exactly what we want. So we did in this particular business, we did a staff survey. I'm not a massive fan generally of staff surveys, because like people tend to tell you what they want, you want to hear. But we did do a quick sort of a flash, what I call a flash survey on stress levels, and we've done that sort of over the years. We just throw these things out and say, how stressed are you right now, or how, you know, how great, how good are you feeling, sort of thing. And we've definitely seen a lot lower stress levels, even during the pandemic, because of all of the things that they did to support their staff, and the technology that they put into that business and everything to help people still feel connected. You know, they were sent little presents every so often, and all sorts of things, like all the way through the pandemic, and still now, to be fair. It really did reduce the stress levels, and as we know, when you get stressed, you get sick. So the fact that you got lower stress levels means that you sick less often, or just have those days where you're just like, oh fuck, I can't be asked to get out of bed. You know, you have fewer of those ideally. So that's really made a difference as well.
But as well, if people are feeling content, well, if they are having a day where they're like, oh God, I just can't. Like I had this last week, my brain would not work. Like all Monday, just would not work no matter what I did.
On Monday.
I was just like, I felt like I was walking through. I wasn't ill or anything. I just, for whatever reason, I was tired, and I was like, do you know what? I'm literally just sitting staring at my screen. I'm not doing anything. I'm not being productive. I'm going to go play out with my horses. But I caught up. I sat down later later in the evening and felt a bit more in it, did an hour then, but then Tuesday I worked like my ass off. So, you know, you will make it up even if people are having that time off.
Yeah, absolutely. But the frequency is definitely less of those kind of like, I just can't be arsed days, right? And then probably the biggest one, which is definitely easy to measure, is an increased profit, and also growth for the business in terms of being able to grow into different areas and whatnot. So and happier clients, we did a big big client survey as well, and they had definitely we could see the difference between legacy clients and how they changed over time as well, and improved business reputation. And like, why would you not want to improve that, you know?
Yeah, because it's not just, you know, yes, staff talk, potential staff talk, all the rest of it, but actually it's about sort of how you're seen in the community as well. You know, people outside will they see what happens within a business. They can tell whether or not you've got happy staff. And, you know, I mean, we do quite a lot of expos and go around places. Everybody knows who Grow Traffic is, because we're quite loud and in your face. But that's because we're a happy team and we feel like a family and everybody gets on and we have a laugh and all the rest of it. If we were all sat there going, oh God, I can't be arsed doing this, that, you know, that is reflecting your business and the world 100%. Sees it. So you don't want that, do you?
No, absolutely. And remember that that employees are very fast to take to Twitter when, you know, they are unhappy. Look at all of the things that happened over the last, you know, during the pandemic with Brewdog and the likes of those types of companies, where we all thought they had a great culture and then it was outed by the employees. So it is really important. And I think ultimately, you know, there were some statistics I was reading yesterday that 80% of employees say that they don't enjoy their job. Like, what the hell is that all about? In my opinion, that is terrible. I mean, like, as a society, we should be ashamed of ourselves that we cannot create decent cultures, because it's not fucking difficult. You know, I can spend 9 to 12 months with a business, put all of the framework in place, create them, you know, help them create a great culture that's right for their business, by the way, because obviously everyone sees great cultures as something different.
Yes.
You know, and employees should be happy, right? Yeah. They should be going out to work and feeling like they've achieved something, that they've got a sense of purpose, and they've got something, you know, to hang their hat up on and say, I did a bloody good job today. And also someone go, yes, well done, you did do a good job, thank you very much, or reward, you know, and give them a reward, or not, but just even a thank you is enough reward, right? And it's, you know, and it, as leaders and managers, that is our responsibility.
But I mean, it's happy. Yeah, because there's that disconnect, isn't there? You know, we always said with Grow Traffic, you know, we want to create a business that we would want to work for. And if you are a leader or a manager, you know, why is it like one rule for, I don't know whether it's because people are damaged and that, you know, it's like it's back to parenting, you know, it didn't do me any harm, so it won't do you any harm. You know, I'll bring you up in the same mold that I was. Is that what it is? Yeah. I think that old school style of management, which was quite popular in the 70s and 80s, which is kind of the management that we grew up with, right? They were that micromanagement, they were command and control. You did get a bollocking if things went wrong. There was that blame culture. There wasn't that kind of focus on people's mental health or people as individuals. It was very much, you know, this is a number, we have a project, you crack on and get on with your job, you know. And I think that presenteeism culture was massive, and they were managed like that, so they feel like they had to manage us like that. And I think then it continues, and unfortunately that toxicity, as you say, a bit like parenting, you know, can go through the generations, and it takes a special person within the, you know, that sort of line of generations to stop and look at it and go, wait a minute, this is not working. Why are we doing this? Let's do something different. It's true. So I just have a quick question for you on this case study before we wrap up. So, you know, when you said about how they went from having an office situation and eventually they moved to not having an office at all and all working, you know, remotely, either from home or from shared working spaces. How hard was it for them to maintain that culture throughout that transition when people weren't in an office together, you know, and did they use technology particularly to
great question.
Force that?
Great question. Okay, so one of the things, I help them put in a framework which basically reinforce their culture as often as possible. So They have a culture, so now they have a process of having flash meetings in the morning, very much focusing on, this is what we're focusing on today, who needs help, who's got capacity, simple as that, dead simple. The directors and the leaders of the business were always talking, and they still do always talk about the vision and the values and the mission of the business, and keep feeding back on where they're up to on that, and how close they are to achieving, you know, the plans in place. And that kind of communication has really, really helped. They do get together on team sort of days, so I definitely think that helps as well.
In person.
In person. And they do encourage people to take time out during the day to just go and have a virtual brew with their workmates as well. So that those definitely helped. Again, that's kind of focusing on a kind of creation of what's the word I want? Connection and those sort of relationships.
Yeah,
right?
human connections. Yeah.
Yeah, that human to human connection, exactly. Yes, they have used technology. So they continue to use Slack, and they continue to use Zoom and Teams. What they actually did initially in the pandemic, and they still do it at some points, depending on who wants to join in, but they have like an open, so when they could have an open Zoom link, and you basically have everybody in the business on the Zoom link if they want to join.
That's quite interesting.
It's a bit like being in this like a shared office,
virtual office. So they're just working away, but they've got the screens open. They can have a chat. That's a really interesting idea, isn't it? I've never thought about that one.
That's really, and it's I think that's really worked as well. And I think really in terms of the other framework that's reinforced the culture is that onboarding has been really important. So new people have been onboarded but sort of buddied all the way through. So it's been it's kind of, there's so many things within the project that we've managed to do to be able to help reinforce the culture, but we have a very strong how we do things around here, a culture code, which again people are sort of indoctrinated into. I mean, ultimately, like, we're creating a cult, aren't we, right?
Yes,
in the best way possible.
Yes.
And so it is about reinforcing all of those things, giving people regular feedback on how they're doing in terms of job as well as culture as well is brilliant. That's really helped. So it's a lot of, leaders don't do a day job as such, right? They manage the people. That is their job. Their leaders are to lead and manage the people and the processes within the business. Simple as that. They do not do the do. Yeah, okay. So that's a big transition. Their responsibility and roles is to keep the culture going, and that's really that's also made a massive difference. So it's about having the culture written down. It's about having standards. It's about having expectations, really clear expectations, what good looks like, what the culture is, and how we do things around here. It's about making sure they're recruiting the right people, onboarding the right and training the right people, and then on constant reinforcing the mission, vision, values, and how we do things.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that Grow Traffic in particular not necessarily struggled with, but because we took on new staff during the pandemic, and because before we had some sort of office, so if we'd had a new starter, they would come and work in the office with me for the first week or 2 weeks or whatever. Because we then couldn't do that, it was, how do we make these people feel like they're part of Grow Traffic when they might be in Manchester or Yorkshire or whatever. And that was kind of one of the biggest challenges that I faced. I mean, we tried different things, we came up with various things, but one of the primary things that we realized we weren't doing was telling them at the beginning that we needed to do this, and we started saying, right at onboarding, in fact even at interview stage, we will need you to meet us halfway. We will need you to communicate in the WhatsApp group, to turn up to the team meetings, to, if we put on a pint at lunchtime, to pop along if you're able to. The employee has to be willing to do that, because otherwise we did end up with one member of staff who just didn't engage at all. And I mean, the work was coming, but not engaging, and then not turning up to training sessions and checking in sessions and blah, blah, blah. As I say, doing the work, but it was really, really hard. And we just had like this outlying member of staff who half the people never spoke to. And I only spoke to once a week. And So in the end, we had to let that person go, unfortunately.
And that goes back to that hire fast and fire fast. And you,
Yeah.
unfortunately, you identified that, right, whilst the person was great at doing their work, they weren't engaging in the rest of the wider team. And they're like, I mean, that's such a great example of you then taking that on board and going, right, this person isn't right for our business. And it's not because they aren't great at the work, it's just they're not a personality fit, or they don't fit with the same values as you do, which is that connection and that, you know, those relationships.
Yeah.
And that's really important to identify quickly. And, you know, yes, give them a chance to, you know, to make those changes, to be more proactive and interactive and stuff. But if that's just totally not them, and there's a values or a personality mismatch, then you have to let them go. And actually, it's kinder to do so, because actually now they may have found a business that doesn't demand that much.
Yeah, I mean, they actively said that after it was quite a sort of tough process at the time.
Yeah.
They got upset, and then we got upset, and it was horrible. And you know, as Dali was saying on last week's live, it should never be easy to fire
Correct.
people. It shouldn't. You should always feel something, and we did. But met them afterwards, and they did say, actually, you know, that they would rather have a job within a business, so not agency side, where they could just focus on one client at a time and do that. So whilst it was, you know, a bit of a painful process, they felt better about it afterwards. You know, Grow Traffic moves on from that, they move on from that, and everybody, as you say, is happier. So yeah, I think that's really interesting, Natalie. Anything you want to finish off or close with in terms of this case study?
Oh goodness, no, I think I say no. Yes, there is.
Yes. No, yes.
No, yes, no, yes. Yeah, I think, you know, listen, I think there's a bit of a misconception that once your business turns, or once a culture turns toxic, then you can't do anything about it. And I think this is a prime example of that. Absolutely, you can. It does take a lot of change and mindset from the leaders, 100%. If the leaders are not on board, then there's nothing that you can do about it. But if the leaders are motivated to make those changes, then actually those changes can be made, and they can be made pretty quickly. Now, you can't change a culture overnight, but you can certainly start changing culture overnight. The culture will take around about sort of 9 to 12 months and a little bit longer to start to properly change, and to actually establish that change in new routine and new habits, as we all know what it's like to create change or make habits, right? No company is lost. The only time that a company is lost and is never going to change their culture is if the leader is not willing to change.
Yeah, if they're completely stuck in their ways.
Yeah,
I think as well. So I mean, I don't often admit to Dali being right very often, but he did. I remember when yes, we won't hear this. But I remember when we very first got our offer, when we were making the transition from me essentially and working as a freelancer and having several freelancers around us, to being a proper business, to get an office, you know, to all that. It was about kind of 5-6 years ago for us now. And I remember saying to him, like, well, you know, what should our company culture be? I was like, should we do like donuts on a Friday, or should we do like a huddle on a Monday? And he was like, you can't force things like that. He said, that will come naturally, and it'll come out, and eventually there will be things that are the Grow Traffic things, and these are the way we do it.
Yeah.
And now, you know, he was right. But now, like, we do a quiz every Friday on WhatsApp, and we all share a song that has made us dance or smile or whatever that morning, and we create playlists, and you know, there's various little things that we do now as a team that have absolutely come up, and I can't even remember how any of those things started, but they've become staples of the week. And now, like, if it's 9:30 on a Friday, we're like, Hannah, where's the quiz, come on. But yeah, so I think if you know, don't be scared to try things, but also don't force it. Don't say like, right, this is going to be our fun company culture and we're going to do it. You can't do that. It's just going to come organically. You got to try things. If it doesn't work, you gave it a shot, abandon it, try something else. And that kind of flexibility and agile way of moving and creating your culture's got to be the way forwards, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think also, you know, listen, there needs to be a framework in place. There does need to be some, you know, some structure and a little bit of process in. Not that I'm not a massive fan of putting loads and loads of process in. But one of the things I will say is that things like, team fruit and team yoga and having things like that is not going to paper over toxic leaders, right?
No.
So if you are a toxic leader and you're thinking of like bringing in team yoga, it ain't going to make a difference to your culture. If you really do want to have a culture, someone actually come in and have a look at your culture and see whether it can be changed, then obviously I'm here, but there are other people out there who do these sort of things. But it does take a change in mindset and leadership.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Well, and we're back to point one, aren't we? It comes
Yeah,
from
there
the
you go.
top. It
There you
always
go.
comes from the top. So yeah, look to yourself and your role first, and then you can start to change everything else. Natalie, thank you so much. Every bit of that was absolute gold dust. And I so appreciate you giving us 2 sessions now. Both of them have been so valuable. Thank you. Please, I will put your contact details in the show notes when this is published. But if anyone does want to contact Natalie and, as I say, have a chat, please do, because she doesn't just talk the talk, you walk the walk, don't you?
I do, thank you. Yeah.
Right, that was brilliant. Thank you so much for your time. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time. I've got no idea what we're talking about, but it will follow on from the Friday Live. So thank you very much. Bye-bye.